Hello sports fans, welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 8 UFL power rankings. Starting off by briefly recapping Week 7, the Defenders beat the Brahmas 32-24, the Panthers defeated the Renegades 25-24, the Stallions beat the Roughnecks 33-25, and the Battlehawks beat the Showboats 19-9. But getting into this week's rankings, beginning things at number 8, I've got the Brahmas. So the Brahmas, they've remained at number 8 after they lost to the Defenders 32-24, but they did look a little bit better this week than they have in previous weeks. But the Brahmas, they had a chance to win this game as they were down 8 with a minute 55 to go, but then they got back up to a 3rd and 31, which they converted just to fumble the ball as soon as they passed the line to game. But the Brahmas, they were decent on offense, scoring 24 points, which actually tied a season high, and quarterback Kevin Hogan was pretty good with 230 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. The Brahmas, they also ran the ball really effectively with 150 yards and a touchdown on 6.2 yards a carry, and 109 of those yards came from running back Deshaun Corbin, who did it on just 9 carries. Then the defense for the Brahmas wasn't great once again, allowing 32 points and over 350 yards. But the Brahmas, they did look a little bit better this week, although they weren't able to get the win. And a fun fact for the Brahmas, they've scored 48 points in their 2 games against the Defenders, which is more than they've scored in the other 5 games combined, as their other 5 games they scored 47. That is an insane fact for the Brahmas, so maybe they should just tell themselves they're playing the Defenders every week. But the Brahmas, they're now 1-6, they've been eliminated from playoff contention, and they've remained at number 8 in my power rankings. 7th, I've got the Showboats. The Showboats, they've remained at number 7 after they lost to the Battlehawks 19-9. The Showboats, they played decently well but couldn't get the win. The offense moved the ball pretty effectively with 273 yards, although they had just 9 points to show for it. Quarterback Dresser Wynn threw for 196 yards and a touchdown, but the Showboats were not effective on the ground, just 3.2 yards per carry. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the Showboats, they were solid, allowing 19 points and 257 yards, and they also forced a turnover, but the offense just couldn't get enough points on the board. But the Showboats, they weren't terrible in this game, ended up losing, and just like the Brahmas, they're now 1-6 and eliminated from playoff contention. Coming in at number 6, I've got the Roughnecks. So the Roughnecks remained at number 6 after they lost to the Stallions 33-25. And this was a big loss for the Roughnecks because a win would have tied them with the Stallions for the second playoff spot in the USFL Conference. But it looked like the Roughnecks might get the win. They got off to a great start, leading 25-6 late in the first half, but then they got outscored 27-0 the rest of the way. The Roughnecks offense was great in the first half with 25 points and nearly 200 yards, but then the offense was non-existent in the second half with 0 points and just 33 yards. Quarterback Jalen McClendon had a pretty solid game with 167 yards and a touchdown, and they also ran the ball pretty effectively with 95 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns on 5.9 yards per carry, but the defense for the Roughnecks wasn't great. They allowed 33 points and nearly 400 yards of offense, and they really struggled to stop the pass and the run. But a major missed opportunity here for the Roughnecks to put themselves in a potential playoff spot, a terrible blown lead, and the Roughnecks, they stay at number 6. 5th, I've got the Renegades. The Renegades, they've remained at number 5 after they took a tough loss to the Panthers 25-24. The Renegades, they had an opportunity to win this game, leading by 6 with 2 minutes to go, but they couldn't hold on for the win. Offensively for the Renegades, they were okay. Bad in the first half with just 6 points, but then much better in the second half with 18 points, and they scored on all 4 of their second half drives, with 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals. Quarterback Luis Perez had a great game, throwing for a season-high 314 yards and 2 touchdowns, and receiver Tyra Vaughns also had a great game, as he caught 9 passes for 127 yards and got in the end zone. Now, the Renegades couldn't run the ball with just 32 rushing yards on 1.4 yards per carry, but it was a good thing for the Renegades. The passing game was great. Then the Renegades defense didn't have their best game, which is kind of surprising because this was a Renegades defense that had been great all year long. But the Renegades defense, they allowed 25 points and 336 yards. They did force 2 turnovers, but couldn't get a big stop when they needed to late in the game. But this wasn't a terrible game for the Renegades. The offense finished the game on a pretty strong note, so maybe they can carry that over into next week's game. But the Renegades, a disappointing loss to the Panthers, and I've got them at number 5. Coming in at number 4, I've got the Stallions. So the Stallions enter at number 4 after they beat the Roughnecks in a wild game at 33-25. The Stallions, they got off to a terrible start, drawing 18-6 at the end of the first quarter and 25-6 late in the first half. But then they scored 27 unanswered points to get the win. And the Stallions, they played pretty well offensively with a season-high 33 points, but they have more injuries at the quarterback position. Case Cookus got the start, but he left the game early with an injury, which forced Jamar Smith into the game to complete the comeback. And Jamar Smith, he's actually the 5th different quarterback to see playing time this season for the Stallions. But both quarterbacks are pretty solid for Birmingham, as Case Cookus threw for 199 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, and Jamar Smith threw for 63 yards and also had a rushing touchdown. And the Stallions, they ran the ball really effectively with 142 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns on 4.4 yards per attempt. Then the defense for the Stallions was bad in the first half, but then great in the second half, not allowing a single second half point, and allowing just 33 yards in the second half. But the Stallions, they continue to show they're a second half team. They've been a second half team since the USFL returned in 2022, and obviously that's carried over all the way till now. But the Stallions, they're now 5-2 on the season, and I've got them at number 4 in my power rankings. Third, I've got the Battlehawks. So the Battlehawks come in at number 3 after they beat the Showboats 19-9. This wasn't the best performance for the Battlehawks, but they were seemingly always in control and led the entire game. The offense for the Battlehawks was decent with 19 points, and quarterback Max Duggan was a little bit better as a passer, as he threw for 158 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, and he continued to be very effective on the ground, as he ran for 57 yards and a score on 10 carries. And the Battlehawks, overall, they ran the ball really effectively with 113 yards and a score on 4.5 yards per carry. Then the defense for the Battlehawks, they were also pretty good. They allowed the Showboats to move the ball, but held them to just 9 points, and 1 for 3 in the red zone, and they also forced a turnover. Not the best win for the Battlehawks, but a pretty solid win, and I've got them at number 3. Second, I've got the Defenders. So the Defenders remain at number 2 after they beat the Brahmas 32-24. Now this is a game that was probably closer than it should have been for the Defenders, but they were able to get the win. The offense was great with 32 points, and quarterback Jordan Chiamo had a great game, completing 19 of his 24 passes for 278 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I've been very hard on Jordan Chiamo so far this season because he has been wildly inaccurate, but he played a really good game, extremely accurate, 3 touchdowns, 278 yards, his best game of the season by far. And it was definitely a good thing Chiamo had a good game because the Defenders, they could not run the ball with just 70 rushing yards. Now, the defense for the Defenders wasn't amazing, allowing 24 points and 357 yards, but they came up with 2 huge turnovers. They returned a fumble for a touchdown at the end of the first half, and then forced a fumble late in the game to seal it. But this was a pretty good game for the Defenders. It definitely could have been better considering they were playing a terrible Brahmas team, and it ended up being a pretty close game. But a win is a win for the Defenders, and I've got them at number 2. And coming in at number 1, I've got the Panthers. The Panthers, they've remained at number 1 after they escaped the Renegades with a 25-24 win. Now, this wasn't the best win for the Panthers, but they found a way to do it. The Panthers' offense was pretty solid with 25 points, and they put together an 11-play, 71-yard drive to tie the game, and then the 1-point conversion run from Toa Taua to win it. Quarterback Bryce Perkins had another big game, as he threw for 231 yards and a touchdown, and he was also the game's leading rusher with 60 rushing yards and another rushing score. And receiver Salesy Mariner also had a nice game for Michigan with 5 catches for 86 yards. Now, the Panthers' defense wasn't the best, as they allowed 24 points, but the offense played really well for the Panthers, and they allowed them to get the win. Panthers, with a big comeback win, are now 5-2 on the season, and they remain at number 1 in my power rankings. But those are my Week 8 UFL power rankings, and thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.